Hello and welcome to our 10th annual State of the Treasury Profession discussion. I'm Kathy Gregg and this is Tony Carfang. We're both partners at Treasury Strategies. And our discussion today has three parts. First of all, expect the unexpected. Some comments on the relentless change that is now Treasury's daily expectation and some macro areas for your broadening focus for this year. Second section about the A-team. There's evidence that Treasury's fortunes are improving resource-wise, and we have some thoughts about leveraging that. And the third section is about complexity, a couple of specific topics where we think Treasuries need to really get it right this year. So Tony, let's dive in and start talking about the unexpected.
Thank you, Kathy. And 2016 is certainly the year of the unexpected. We've already seen volatile markets, currency fluctuations, commodity price fluctuations. It's been a hectic year already, and we're only a couple of weeks into it. There are more moving parts that corporate treasury needs to manage than ever before. The markets have fundamentally changed since the financial crisis. There are different service providers, the rules have changed, the institutions have changed. There are a lot of things that are different now than we've been accustomed to in the past. The traditional service providers are refocusing. Higher capital requirements and new regulations are making historical relationships out of equilibrium, and corporate treasury needs to manage that and expect the unexpected. Some of the moving parts we're dealing with are rising rates. The Federal Reserve tightened a quarter of a point recently. History shows that an initial tightening is followed by 15 subsequent interest rate increases before the next interest rate decrease. That's a lot of interest rate increases over the next couple of years, and Treasury needs to anticipate and plan for that. There's uneven economic growth. There are commodity price challenges in your supply chain, taxation issues, trap cash. The whole complexity of corporate treasury. And financial providers are also in a state of flux themselves. Banks are more precisely targeting their clients, and they're focusing on certain lines of business and certain geographies with much more discipline and rigor than they have before. Technology companies are building far more robust solutions that work for the most sophisticated companies as well as smaller and middle market companies. And fintech, which we've heard about now for the past couple of years, is finally reaching the corporate marketplace and the B2C marketplace in particular, which will change the way corporations deal with their customers. So there's a lot of change in 2016, and corporate treasury needs to gear up to manage that. That's the biggest challenge for 2016.
So Tony, that's the doing more. Let's talk about the with more. Because treasuries always used to be the poster children for doing more with less. And now we're saying they're going to be getting more resources. That comes out of some research that we have done recently that says many treasuries expect they're going to be expanding their staffs over the next couple of years. And there's a lot of evidence that they have already invested way more in technology resources. So we want to talk about, we're calling that building the A-team, which is a combination of not only your own staff and your internal connections inside the company outside of Treasury, but external partners, and finally your technology tools. So let's talk about staff and internal connections first. You need to make the most of the hires if you're going to be getting some new hires, and one way to do that is thinking about your Treasury org structure. And we suggest, rather than looking at the people that you have and creating structure around them, you do it exactly the opposite, that you get a clean piece of paper and think about designing the Treasury organization of the future that makes the most sense for your company, and then seeing how your existing resources fit into that. Where there are gaps, that represents your hiring plan for the next couple of years. At the same time, don't neglect building your connections around the company outside of Treasury. Now this could include obviously tax people, IT people, security, the cyber group, marketing people. It could be a lot of different areas, and if you have good connections in those areas, it's going to help Treasury accomplish its goal. And then finally, you want to consider the competencies that are going to be very important for your firm as it moves forward. And this ties back to some of what you're talking about with the new payment areas, for example. So if your firm does a lot of B2C business and you got people running around talking about blockchain and PayPal and Apple Pay, Treasury is probably going to need some new payment expertise somewhere in the very near couple of years. On the other hand, if you're more B2B, then you may be adding a lot of currency exposures as your company merges and expands and you get new geographies on your roster, and you may need to be looking for people with those kind of talents. So think about those competencies. Moving into the second category of resources, the external partners. Here, what you want to be doing is trying to identify people in the groups that support Treasury from the outside that really can bring something to the table. These could be very competent, futuristic thinking bankers. Could be people from a consulting firm like Treasury Strategies, somebody from a payment company or risk management company. Any of your outside partners may have a real gem or two, a cream of the crop kind of person who would be willing to invest in your Treasury future, who has a relationship mentality, not a deal mentality, and somebody obviously who can really contribute. The flip side of this is you, yourself, have to be willing to share your strategy with the outside so that the A team can jump on board, and you also have to think about this as their contribution having value. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to get when you're worried about procurement shaving the last nickel off the contract, because then that doesn't create the environment for value.
It's a commodity.
It is not a commodity, right? Don't let procurement treat it as such when you want to bring those people on. And finally, you want to think about your technology tools. Now, this is not just your Treasury workstation anymore. It's much broader. It's your ERP connected to your Treasury management system, connected to SWIFT, connected to your banks. It's your risk management platform. It's your payments platform. All of those things together are the technology tools that you're going to need. And the word of advice for this year is, because everybody has things in their technology that they're not happy with, this is the year to get those things fixed. It doesn't have to be rip and replace, but you need to plug the holes. Maybe it's a bolt-on. Maybe it's getting the upgrade done that you've been putting off. Maybe it's getting a report writer in to finally create the reports that you really need to get the value out of the biggest investment the Treasury ever makes. So, with all that in place, that A team, you're equipped for the complexity.
Well, Kathy, the A team is going to be really busy in 2016 managing complexity. There's so much to deal with. I'm going to talk about 4 specific things here. And the first is re-equipping Treasury to deal with the new interest rate dynamics. We have positive interest rates in some parts of the world, negative interest rates elsewhere, diverging central bank policies. Who knows where this is going to go? But the A team needs to manage this for the firm. Now, it's not possible to guess what central banks are going to do, but the job of the treasurer, rather than guessing, is to develop likely scenarios and then action plans on how to react, how corporate treasury needs to respond if any of those scenarios actually come to pass. Should you invest long? Should you invest short? Should you borrow long? Should you hedge? I mean, so many questions that with the data you have access to and the brains on the A team and your external partners on the A team, you can put this all together and actually come up with a nice solution. Number 2 is managing liquidity. This is paramount because without liquidity, if you can't pay today's bills today, you're out of business. So you have to have access to liquidity at all times. And the market isn't accommodating. Traditional funding sources, in some cases banks with higher capital requirements, may be less willing to lend. Money market funds with assets leaving prime money market funds may have fewer assets to buy corporate debt with. So there could be pockets of illiquidity, and you need to manage that. You need global visibility of your cash in order to maintain your liquidity. Securing access to longer-term capital is critical as well. And we talked about how the markets have changed. Relationships between financial institutions and their customers have really changed fundamentally. Regulation, capital requirements, the whole 9 yards there, have really turned financial service providers and lenders into compliance officers. The AML, the KYC. Do you qualify? Are you an acceptable customer to the bank? We're no longer talking about relationship banking, we're talking about compliance banking. And that really changes your ability to rely on a financial institution as a provider. Many of our clients tell us they have great relationships with their bankers, but not necessarily a great relationship with their bank. That's a different calculus than we've ever had to deal with before. And then finally, number 4 is cash forecasting. Many of our clients haven't had to do cash forecasting since 2006 or 2007 when rates were higher and then there was really an opportunity cost to a bad forecast. Some of our clients say, well, they're just going to dust off their old forecasting system, but in fact, it's probably written on a version of Excel that's not even supported anymore. And it's not really a forecast. As we go back and look at these systems, systems that date from that era are really cash calendars, where a company puts onto the spreadsheet known items and builds a cash schedule around that. Well, that's certainly better than nothing. That's not a cash forecast. And given the technology today and the skill set of Treasury folks today, you can actually build something that's a lot more sophisticated and will serve you well as you're dealing in this new era of complexity. So Kathy, the A-team is going to have its hands full.
Yep, we're going to be doing more with more, hopefully more. So as a wrap-up, for 2016, we see that there's going to be more turmoil among the vital players in the Treasury space, more moving parts, more complexities, and hopefully more resources among your internal, external, and technology resources for Treasury to accomplish all this with. So as you're thinking about what this means, what you're going to do for 2016 with this, our suggestion is write down 2 or 3 of the things you really want to accomplish in 2016, and then think about the internal and external resources you want to get on board with you to help you do that. And think about Treasury strategies. We could be an external partner for many of you as well. So we look forward to hearing from you and encourage you. Make 2016 your best year ever. Thank you.